The dog was going under. Logan saw him from the bridge on Parish Road 57, a German shepherd fighting the current in the drainage canal that 3 days of Hurricane Ida's runoff had turned from a 2-foot trickle into 12 feet of brown moving water, the dog's head barely above the surface, his paws working with the desperate, flagging rhythm of an animal that has been fighting too long and is losing the argument with the water. He was 50 yards downstream and moving fast. He was not going to make another 50. Logan was over the railing before he finished the thought. The water was warm. Louisiana water is always warm, even when everything else about it is wrong. And brown and moving with the specific force of water that has collected the weight of 3 days of rain in its current and is spending it all at once. Logan came up facing downstream, found the dog, reached him in 6 strokes, got one arm under the animal's chest and his other hand on the rail of the bank and held on. The dog did not fight him. He simply went still, the complete, trusting stillness of an animal that has reached the end of what it can do alone and has accepted help. Logan got them both to the bank. He did not know yet what the dog had cost him. He did not know yet what the dog would give back. He knew a dog was drowning, and he had gone in after it, which was the only calculation available to him in that moment and the only one he would have made. Before we go any further, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If this story stays with you, please subscribe and follow it until the very end. What Maverick found in the flooded backwoods of Terrebonne Parish 4 days after Logan pulled him from that canal is something that people in that part of Louisiana still talk about when the subject of miracles comes up. Stay with us. Logan Drake was 40 years old and had been back in Terrebonne Parish for 14 months. Which was not long enough to feel like home again and long enough to understand that home does not reassemble itself on a schedule. He was 6 feet, rangy, with a kind of build that stays useful rather than becoming decorative, wide through the shoulders and economical everywhere else. The body of a man who had spent 2 decades treating his physical condition as a professional requirement. His hair was dark and cut short by habit, and his face had the particular quality of faces that have been weather-worked and sun-worked and experience-worked into something that is not handsome in a conventional sense, but is very specifically itself. His eyes were a pale brown, amber almost, the kind of color that is hard to name and easy to remember. And they moved through every space he entered with the systematic sweep of a man for whom reading an environment is not a skill, but a reflex, practiced until it became the way his brain simply worked. He had been Chief Petty Officer Logan Drake, SEAL Team 2, for 16 years. 3 deployments to Afghanistan, 2 to Iraq, 1 to the Horn of Africa under a designation that required a clearance he technically still held to discuss. He had come home to Louisiana in June of the previous year with a medical retirement for the hearing loss in his left ear from a breaching charge that had gone wrong in a hallway in Mosul in 2019. And the specific, disorienting quiet of a man who has been operating at maximum intensity for 16 years and has been handed, without warning, a life that does not require it. He had come home to Terrebonne Parish because his father's house was there. The small house on the bayou that his father had left him and his brother equally in 2017, and which his brother had agreed Logan could use while they figured out what to do with it. He had a 16-foot aluminum fishing boat, a commercial fishing license, and the knowledge of the bayou that a person accumulates growing up on it and maintains by instinct regardless of how long they have been away. He had been doing charter fishing and some dock work and whatever contract jobs came up, and the combination had been sufficient until the hurricane had rearranged the arithmetic. Ida had come through on a Tuesday and had taken the dock he worked from, the charter bookings for the following 6 weeks, and the engine on the aluminum boat, which had been submerged in the surge and had not recovered from the experience. He had $180 in his checking account. He had a truck that ran, a house that had stayed upright, and the specific, controlled practicality of a man who has been in worse situations and has learned that the only response to a bad situation is the next right thing, done now. The next right thing, on the morning of the fourth day after the hurricane, was apparently pulling a German Shepherd out of a flooded drainage canal. The emergency veterinary clinic in Homa, the only one open in the parish, running on a generator, was staffed by a veterinarian named Dr. Clara Fontenot, which was a last name Logan would encounter again under different and worse circumstances before the week was over. Though she was not part of those circumstances. She was a good vet. She assessed the dog quickly and competently, hypothermia, lacerations along the right flank, where he had apparently been swept against something in the current, severe dehydration, exhaustion, and she told Logan that the dog needed fluids and monitoring and warmth and time, and that the treatment would cost $340. Logan had his debit card in his hand. He told her he had $180. She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the dog on the examination table, who was looking at Logan with the amber eyes of an animal taking stock of who has just decided to be responsible for its life. "Leave what you have," she said. "We'll figure out the rest." He left $180. He waited in the parking lot for 4 hours because the waiting room was full and there was nowhere else to go, and he was not going to leave. When Dr. Fontenot came out to update him, she brought coffee. The specific, powerful Louisiana coffee that is its own category of beverage, and sat on the tailgate of his truck and told him the dog was going to make it, and told him something else. "He has a tattoo," she said, inside the left ear. "W'd registration. He's a police K-9. She paused. Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's K-9 unit. He's been listed as missing since the storm." Logan looked at the clinic door. He was working the search grids in the flooded areas, she said. His handler got separated from him in the current. They've been looking. She made the call to the sheriff's department from her office. The K-9 unit lieutenant came within the hour. A compact, serious man named Torres, who looked at the dog in the recovery kennel with the expression of someone finding something they had stopped expecting to find, and who turned to Logan with a handshake that was firmer than most, and said his name was Maverick, and he had been their best tracker for 5 years, and they were grateful. Logan said he was glad he'd been on the bridge. Torres said, "Keep him until he's cleared for duty. We're stretched thin. He could use a good place to recover." He looked at Logan with the measuring quality of someone identifying a specific kind of person. "Something tells me this is a good place." Logan looked at the dog, who was watching him from the kennel with the amber. Specific attention of an animal that had already made its decision about where it was going to be for the foreseeable future. "He can stay," Logan said. Maverick was 7 years old, which was mature for working K-9s but not old. He carried his age in a slight deliberateness of movement that was not reduced capacity but refined focus. The conserved precision of an animal that has learned to spend its energy on the things that require it. His coat was the deep amber and black of a dog in his prime, thick even after everything the storm had put him through, already beginning to recover its texture as the hydration and the warmth and the rest did their work. He had a scar along his right flank from the current, new, healing well, and a notch in his left ear that predated the storm, earned in a narcotics enforcement operation in 2021 that Torres had described briefly and without elaborating. He weighed 84 pounds. He had been certified in live fine detection and narcotics for 5 years and had 41 confirmed fines in his working record, which Torres had mentioned in the way that people mention things they are proud of without wanting to seem like they are bragging about them. He healed at Logan's house in 4 days. not slowly, with the determined, almost businesslike efficiency of an animal that has places to be and is not interested in taking longer than necessary about the recovery. He ate. He slept. On the third morning, he walked his own perimeter of the property with the systematic sweep of a dog running a pattern search on new territory, logging every entrance and exit and line of sight with the attention of a professional. On the fourth morning, he did it again, and at the southeast corner of the property, where the tree line opened onto the old logging road that ran back into the flooded bottomland, he stopped. He did not sit. He stood, weight forward, nose working at the heavy August air, with the focused, rhythmic respiration of an animal processing something that requires its full capacity. Logan watched him. He had learned enough about working canines to understand the difference between a dog investigating new smells and a dog who has found something specific. This was specific. "What do you have?" he said. Maverick looked back at him once, the amber eyes direct and certain, and then looked at the logging road. Logan went inside and got his boots. The logging road ran 2 miles back into the bottomland, through second-growth cypress and tupelo that the storm had rearranged significantly, and it ended at a cluster of duck hunting camps that had been built in the 1970s and maintained with the specific informal commitment of families who used them seasonally and considered them worth keeping. 3 of the camps had been visible from the road before the storm. After the storm, the road was blocked, not by fallen timber, by barriers, orange construction barriers of the type used by contractors for site management, placed across the road at the half-mile mark, with a hand-lettered sign reading "Road closed. Hazardous conditions, no entry." A padlocked gate had been added behind the barriers, and the gate was new, the chain was bright and unweathered in a way that the rest of the storm-damaged landscape was not. Logan stood at the barrier and looked at the gate and looked at Maverick, who had gone to the gate and was working the air on the other side of it with the full, concentrated attention of a dog who has not found what he is looking for but knows what direction it is in. Something was wrong with the gate being there. He knew the road. He had hunted those camps with his father as a boy and had driven that road 100 times, and there was no entity with authority to close it. It was a parish road, maintained by the Public Works Department, and the only person with the standing to restrict access was the parish itself. The construction barriers were not the parish's, the gate was not the parish's, and the sign was not the parish's, which Logan knew because the parish used specific sign formats, and this was a hand-lettered piece of plywood. He pulled out his phone and called the Terrebonne Parish Sheriff's known emergency line and reported a potentially unauthorized road closure on the logging road off Bayou du Large Road, and gave the location and said he had reason to believe it needed to be verified. The deputy who answered took his information and said someone would look into it. He drove home and looked up the road closure on the parish emergency management website. There was no record of an authorized closure at that location. He called Torres. The name Harlan Fonteno appeared in Torres's response with a specific weight, not surprise, but the weight of a name that has come up before in contexts that did not resolve cleanly. Harlan Fonteno was 53 years old and owned Fonteno Construction and Recovery Services, which held 3 active FEMA disaster relief contracts in Terrebonne Parish following the hurricane, debris removal, temporary infrastructure, staging, and logistics. He was a man who had done business in the parish for 20 years and who had the particular untouchability of someone whose business relationships extend in enough directions that complaints against him tend to find their way to desks occupied by people who have worked with him, which is not the same as accountability but functions similarly in the short term. Torres said he would look into the road closure. He said it carefully. in the way of a man who is telling the truth about his intentions and is also aware of the terrain. Logan thanked him and sat on the porch and watched Maverick watching the tree line in the direction of the logging road, and thought about a new padlock on a gate that was not supposed to be there, and about what a dog with 41 confirmed live-fine detections was telling him with his body. He drove back to the gate the next morning at 5 a.m. with a bolt cutter he had in the truck bed for cutting crab trap lines. The padlock came off in 4 seconds. He drove through. He drove 2 miles of storm-damaged logging road in the dark with Maverick in the passenger seat and the dog's full attention fixed forward, body taut, reading the air through the cracked window with the systematic respiration of a dog running a known protocol. At the second hunting camp, a structure that had been pushed off its pilings by the storm surge and was listing badly to the east, partially collapsed, the roof touching the ground on the downhill side, Maverick hit the signal. He did not bark. He sat, the specific, final, certified sit of a dog communicating one thing and one thing only, here. Living here, Logan ran. She was in the corner of the collapsed structure that had remained upright, the northwest corner, where 2 walls had held each other at the angle of their joining, creating a space roughly 4 feet by 4 feet that was above the waterline and had enough air. She was 8 years old, small for her age, with dark Cajun hair matted against her face and the gray-tinged skin of a child who has been through 4 days of heat and dehydration and the specific terror of not knowing if anyone is coming. Her right arm was pinned under a fallen wall section, not broken. The angle had prevented the full weight from landing on the bone, but she had not been able to move it for 4 days. She was conscious. She looked at Logan with the enormous, exhausted eyes of a child who has been saving her energy for a long time for exactly this moment. She looked at Maverick, who had come in behind Logan and had gone immediately to her side and pressed himself against her. His full 84 pounds of warmth and certainty communicating the thing he always communicated in a find. I am here, you are found. It is over now. Her face changed. Good dog, she whispered. He was not going to disagree with that. Her name was Grace Thibodeau. Her father was Raymond Thibodeau, 55 years old, a Gulf War veteran who had been searching the bottomland for 4 days with the specific, refusing to stop quality of a man who has been trained not to leave people behind, and has applied that training to the search for his daughter with every hour available to him. He had been turned back from the logging road gate twice by Fontenot's workers, who had told him the area was structurally unsafe and entry was prohibited. Which was the story that was keeping everyone out of the 2 miles of bottomland where the hunting camps were, and where, it would emerge, 3 of Fontenot's trucks were staged with FEMA materials that were not going to the destinations listed on their manifests. Logan called 911 from inside the collapsed structure, one hand on the wall section that was pinning Grace's arm, keeping it stable. He called Torres on a second call. He called both of them twice in the next 90 seconds because the first calls had not conveyed the urgency with the precision he needed, and the second calls did. Emergency services arrived in 22 minutes. The sheriff's department arrived 4 minutes after that. Torres arrived personally, which Logan had not expected, and which told him something about Torres that he filed for later. Fontenot's worker, a man named Bo, who had been stationed at the gate and who drove up the logging road on a 4-wheeler when he saw the emergency vehicles come through, made the specific mistake of attempting to assert that the area was restricted even after an 8-year-old girl was being lifted out of a collapsed structure by a paramedic. He made this assertion to a sheriff's deputy who had Torres standing next to him, and the assertion did not land the way Bo had perhaps hoped it would. Torres walked the 2 miles of logging road that afternoon with 2 investigators from the parish and the FEMA Regional Fraud Unit, which had been notified by Torres's office that morning before he had driven to the bottomland. The 3 trucks staged behind the second hunting camp contained materials, roofing supplies, water filtration units, emergency generators, valued at approximately $240,000, all bearing FEMA manifest numbers assigned to distribution sites in parishes that were waiting for them. Harlan Fonteno was arrested at his office in Houma on a Friday afternoon. His attorney drove from New Orleans. It did not go well for Harlan Fonteno. Grace Thibodeau was treated for dehydration and a bruised ulna and mild hypothermia and was discharged from Terrebonne General on a Saturday. She was fine, the specific, resilient fine of a healthy 8-year-old who has been through something terrible and whose body has the resources to recover from it, and whose father was sitting next to her hospital bed when she woke up with a particular expression of a man whose prayer has been answered with such completeness that gratitude and grief have become temporarily indistinguishable. Raymond Thibodeau came to Logan's house on the Sunday. He was a broad, quiet man with the Gulf War in his face, the way wars get into faces, not visible in any specific feature, but present in the quality of his attention, the specific weight of how he occupied a chair. He sat at Logan's kitchen table, and he did not say a great deal for the first several minutes. He drank his coffee. He looked at Maverick, who was on the kitchen floor between them with his chin on Raymond's boot. 4 days, Raymond said finally. I drove that road twice. They turned me back twice. Logan said nothing, because there was nothing useful to add to that. If you hadn't cut that gate, Raymond said. Maverick cut the gate, Logan said. I just had the bolt cutter. Raymond looked at the dog. His jaw tightened in the specific way of a man who is managing something by keeping it very controlled. He found her in 4 days, he said, when the search teams with their equipment and their protocols didn't. He's good at what he does, Logan said. Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What do you need? Logan looked at his coffee. I'm fine, he said. Raymond looked at him with the eyes of a veteran who has been told he's fine by people who weren't, and who knows the difference, and who is not going to accept the answer. Your boat engine, he said. I heard about the engine. Logan had not told him about the engine. Word travels, Raymond said simply. I know a man in Chauvin who rebuilds marine engines. He owes me a favor from 1997, and I have never collected it. He put his coffee mug down with the finality of a man who has made a decision. I'm going to collect it now. Harlan Fonteno was indicted on 11 counts of federal disaster relief fraud in November. The materials recovered from the logging road staging area were valued, in total, at $417,000 across multiple FEMA contracts. The investigation that followed identified 2 additional staging locations in adjacent parishes and a pattern of fraudulent manifesting that went back to a previous hurricane recovery contract in 2020. Fonteno accepted a plea agreement in the spring, 7 years federal, full restitution, permanent debarment from federal contracting. His company was dissolved. His name was removed from the 3 active parish contracts, which were rebid to legitimate contractors. The FEMA regional office issued a public statement commending the sheriff's department's investigation. Torres was quoted in the Houma Courier. Maverick was not quoted because Maverick was a dog, but the article mentioned his role in the find with the specific, matter-of-fact accuracy of a reporter who understood that the find was the story and the dog was the center of it. Torres came by the week after the article ran. He sat on Logan's porch and they watched Maverick run the perimeter of the property in the October light. The Louisiana October that is the best weather the state produces, warm and golden and still. The bayou holding the light in a way that makes the whole parish look like something a painter decided on. Torres watched the dog for a while. The unit wants him back, Torres said, when he's ready. Logan looked at Maverick. The dog was at the southeast corner of the property, at the tree line, at the place where the logging road began, and he was standing with his nose into the October air, reading it with the patient, systematic attention of an animal that is always, at some level, looking. "He know that?" Logan said. Torres almost smiled. "He knows what he knows," he said. "He'll go when he decides to go." He went in November. Torres came with the unit truck, and Maverick walked to it with the deliberate, unhurried pace of an animal returning to its vocation. And he looked back once at Logan from the truck bed, the amber eyes direct and specific. The look of an animal that has completed what it came to do and is satisfied with the completion. Logan raised his hand. Maverick's tail moved once. Then Torres drove away. By the following August, 1 year after the hurricane, 1 year after the bridge on Parish Road 57, Logan's boat was running. The engine from Chauvin had been rebuilt by a man named Arsenault, who had the slow, thorough competence of someone who has been doing a thing for 40 years and has stopped needing to hurry. Raymond had collected his favor, and Raymond's favor had been fully honored, which was the kind of thing that happened in Terrebonne Parish between men who made commitments in 1997 and kept them until called upon. The charter business had come back. Slowly, the way things come back after hurricanes. Not all at once, but steadily, one booking at a time. The bayou reasserting its generosity as the water cleared and the fish returned to where they had always been. Logan knew the water. He knew where to take people. The knowledge was the asset that the hurricane had not been able to take, and the knowledge was sufficient. Grecia Thibodeau had started the new school year in the 3rd grade. Raymond sent Logan a photograph of her on the first day, backpack on, the specific gap-toothed smile of an 8-year-old who has been told this is a picture-worthy moment and is fully cooperating. She was wearing a shirt with a German Shepherd on it. Logan kept the photograph on the kitchen table because it was the photograph of a child who was alive. Maverick came back on the first Sunday of every month. Torres drove him out, a thing the lieutenant had arranged on his own, without being asked, because Torres was the kind of man who understood that some partnerships do not end when the working arrangement does. The dog would run the property for an hour with the specific, joyful energy of an animal doing something it loves in a place it considers its own, and then he would come and sit beside Logan on the porch, and they would watch the bayou together in the Sunday light. On those mornings, Logan drank his coffee and listened to the bayou doing its permanent, ancient work. The herons and the water and the wind in the Spanish moss, and he thought about $180 and a drowning dog, and the specific mathematics of giving away your last thing and what it turned out to be worth. Not in money. In Grace Thibodeau's photograph on his kitchen table. In Raymond's handshake, in the particular Sunday morning quality of a dog sitting next to you in Louisiana October like he has nowhere else to be. He had given everything he had left. Everything he had left had been exactly enough. Sometimes miracles wear the shape of a drowning dog. Sometimes they arrive in the moment when a man with nothing left gives the nothing away without calculating whether he can afford to, because the calculating and the giving have become mutually exclusive and he has always known which one he is. Logan Drake pulled Maverick from the water on a Wednesday morning with $180 in his account and an engine that wouldn't start and a hurricane's worth of damage between him and the life he had been trying to build. And none of that was in the equation when he went over the railing. The equation was a dog going under and a man who did not know how to watch that happen. God does not waste the ones who go in without calculating the cost. He keeps track of the moments when a person gives their last and asks nothing back, and he answers them, Not always immediately, not always obviously, but completely. The $180 became a child's life. The child's life became a father's gratitude. The father's gratitude became an engine rebuilt in Chauvin. The engine became a boat running on a Louisiana bayou on a clear October morning with a charter full of people who had no idea they were floating on the residue of a miracle. Loyalty given freely always comes back. It comes back as a dog sitting at your side on a Sunday. It comes back as a photograph on a kitchen table. It comes back as the specific, quiet certainty of a man who has learned that giving away what you have left is not the end of things. It is very often the beginning. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that what you give in the hardest moments is never truly lost. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from, and if you have ever given something you couldn't afford to give and found that it came back to you in a form you didn't expect, we want to hear that. Your story might be exactly what someone needs tonight. If you believe in loyalty, in generosity, in the grace that finds the ones who give without asking, subscribe to this channel and don't miss the next story. May God bless you, protect your family, and remind you that what you give away in the cold always finds its way home. You are never pouring into empty.